Welcome to the infamous 9/11 college dorm room questionnaire, because your professors certainly won't tell you a damn thing about what really happened. Before you begin, let me remind you of one thing, that World Trade Center Building 7 was a massive building at 47 stories tall. Now, of course, it was dwarfed in relative proportion to Tower 1 and 2, but if Building 7 was just randomly placed anywhere in Europe, it would be the largest building in over 90% of those EU countries, say, wherever it was placed. Now, you would need someone to pause this video to carefully consider your answers. If you're watching on a PC or on YouTube, this can be accomplished by hitting the space bar. Let's get started. Question 1. Who of the following was an investor in George W. Bush's oil company that he owned in the 1980s? It was called Arbusto Energy. Was it Al Gore the oil man? Was it Osama Bin Laden's brother Salim Bin Laden? Dick Cheney's baby mama? Or was it the transgender Senator Diane Feinstein? Please pause this video now to carefully consider your answer. Question 2. On the day of 9/11, where was George Bush the Sr.? Was he skydiving? Was he partying at Yale's Skull and Bones? Was George Bush, H.W. Bush, at a meeting with Osama Bin Laden's other brother, Shrugged Bin Laden? Or was he at his own presidential library demanding that the World Book Encyclopedia is still relevant? Please pause this video now to carefully consider your answer. And please note, this will be the last warning to pause the video. Question 3. A company named Securicom handled digital security for the WTC complex. Who was a director of Securicom from 1993 to the year 2000? Was it another of Bin Laden's brothers? Perhaps the evil German mastermind who fought John McClane in the movie Die Hard? Yippee-ki-yay, mother... Was it Marvin P. Bush, the president's own brother? Or again, was it the transgender Senator Diane Feinstein? Question 4. Prior to the 3 steel frame buildings that collapsed on the day of 9/11, collapsed from fire, how many steel frame buildings had collapsed in, say, the last 100 years? The note is, according to NIST, fire was the official cause of collapse. Had there been 10 steel frame buildings in the last 100 years that collapsed from fire? 56 buildings? No steel buildings had ever collapsed from fire? Or is it too damn many to count? Question 5. Since 9/11, how many steel frame buildings in the world have collapsed from fire? Again, it's too many. Nobody knows. Of course, only the famous Casa de Toothpick in Cleveland has collapsed from fire. 3. 0 buildings since 9/11 have collapsed. Only the Willis Tower in Chicago. Side note, this is Building 7. That's the fire. It collapsed from fire. Question 6. Which of the following is not a real group disputing the official story of 9/11? Pilots for 9/11 Truth? Scientists for 9/11 Truth? Perhaps they're not real? Architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth? Or is it Chicago O'Hare baggage handlers for 9/11 Truth? Carefully consider your answer. Question 7. What is meant by the term free fall collapse of a building? Is it when a demolition is synced up to the music of Tom Petty? When a building over 30 stories is pushed over by the Santa Ana winds? Or is it when tens of thousands of tons of steel and concrete all fall to the ground as fast as a bowling ball dropped through the air? Question 8. When did FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, arrive in New York City to help? Like in Hurricane Katrina, FEMA still hasn't arrived at the scene. FEMA arrived the next day, 9/12. They arrived 4 days after on 9/15, complaining that the site was too dangerous for humans until then. Or FEMA arrived the day before on September 10th. Question 9. Osama Bin Laden was actually found in 1997 after several international terrorist attacks that he had taken credit for. Who located Bin Laden 4 years before 9/11? Was it the NSA's billion-dollar supercomputer called the Whopper, as it was monitoring global telecommunication? Was it a CIA spy satellite, like maybe the one that could read license plates since 1980? Or was it Peter Arnett of CNN with his camera guy? They found and interviewed Bin Laden. Carefully consider your answer. Question 10. Which one or more of the following people were supposed to board Mohammed Atta's American Airlines Flight 11 but made last-minute changes or just happened to miss the doomed flight? Was it Family Guy creator Seth MacFarlane? Marky Mark? Was it Dr. Dow of the United Airlines incident? Or was it Anthony Weiner, who was too busy sexting a 9-year-old? Question 11. According to the WTC engineer who actually designed the Twin Towers, how strong did he describe their construction was when they were built in 1968 and 1969? He said they were Ford tough. He joked that they were King Kong proof, knowing that the lame Jeff Bridges remake was already in production. Or did he state that they could be struck by the world's largest aircraft of the time and still survive the impact? Question 12. What is the industry term used when a high-rise building is brought down with controlled demolition, or dynamite, explosives? Would you say the building was yanked, yank it, whack it, pull it, or fire in the hole? Question 13. In a PBS interview, what did Larry Silverstein, the lease owner of the WTC complex, what did Larry say they decided to do to Building 7 the afternoon of 9/11? Silverstein said, "We just decided to yank it. We just decided to whack it. We just decided to pull it." Or Silverstein asked the fire department to actually put the fire out and save the building. Question 14. Live on air, when did BBC reporter Jane Stanley report that WT7 had actually collapsed? She reported it the night before, when FEMA arrived? Just 5 minutes after 7 collapsed, she was that on top of it? 10 minutes after? Or 23 minutes before Building 7 actually went down? Carefully consider your answer. Side note, there's Jane Stanley, and there's WTC-7 in the background. We've received reports that the Solomon Building, which is also called WTC-7, has gone down. Question 15. How did the 9/11 Commission report explain the free fall, the 9-second collapse of Building 7, when it was not struck by a plane and the buildings closer to Tower 1 and 2 did not collapse? How did the official 9/11 Commission report address this? 1. That 7 collapsed because Rosie O'Donnell re-entered the building, going back up for her donuts. 2. The 9/11 Commission report cited the collapse was from fire, just like Building 1 and 2. It added the Popular Mechanics addendum to the back to explain it. Or after months of research, The 560-page 9/11 Commission report, assembled by a panel of experts, didn't even mention the 47-story skyscraper at all. Not one word, not one line. Question 16. The very day before 9/11, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld made a shocking announcement. What did he tell the world on September 10th, 2001? That he was the first transgender presidential cabinet member? That Osama bin Laden himself had also invested in Bush's oil company, not just Osama's brother? Oop, I guess I gave away the first answer. That the Pentagon was suing Tom Cruise and the producers of Top Gun for libel? That the Pentagon had misplaced and can no longer account for $2 trillion. Question 17. Which of the following was not a tenant in Building 7 before its free fall collapse? The Department of Defense, CIA, IRS, the SEC, the U.S. Secret Service, or perhaps Jamba Juice's world headquarters were not in Building 7 before it collapsed. Carefully consider your answer. Question 18. How long did it take the government to put out the exact list of terrorist names and who actually done it? 1. The multi-agency and the biggest investigation in American history took 8 full weeks, and it took time to interview all the families of everyone who was on board each flight. 2. No terrorists have yet to be named in the 9/11 attack. Or 3. In 48 hours, all the hijackers were named and their pictures were released by the government. Amazingly, they also knew who flew the planes. Wow. Question 19. At what point did the media begin to focus on Osama bin Laden as the likely mastermind behind 9/11? Did the media focus on bin Laden 3 weeks later, after an FBI press conference at the J. Edgar Hoover building where they presented detailed evidence gathered against bin Laden over a long period of time? Or did the media focus on bin Laden less than 10 minutes after the Tower 2 explosion, where almost all the big media had mentioned bin Laden by name as the likely mastermind, and just 2 hours later the entire world told us it was bin Laden? No investigation necessary, of course. Question 20. Flight 93 crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. What's the official FBI explanation as to why there was no plane wreckage at the crash site, at least anything larger than a pizza box? The FBI said that Dick Cheney shot it down. 2. That Flight 93 never crashed at all. It's with Malaysia MH370, it's with Bruce Lee and Jim Morrison. They said that it plunged perfectly into an abandoned strip mine where all of it was just gobbled up by loose soil. Question 21. According to NIST, the official reason for the collapse of all 3 buildings was fire. How long did WTC-2 burn before freefall collapse? Burn for 3 hours, 1 hour and 45 minutes, or just 58 minutes? Question 22. How long did this building burn before it did not collapse, just like all the other skyscrapers on fire in the last 100 years that did not collapse? That building, pictured, must have only burned for about 45 minutes, because any more than that and they all freefall collapse. We know that from 9/11. 2. Hundreds of steel buildings have burned for 15 hours or more in the last 100 years. Not only were they all still standing after the fire, most were rebuilt and used on the same steel frame. Choose your answer wisely. Question 23. What from the plane wreckage was found at Ground Zero in New York City? Did they find the indestructible titanium black boxes? Or a paper passport of a hijacker, which was found on the street below World Trade Center 1 and then promptly handed over to the FBI? Question 24. How many pilots, real pilots that fly today, I take that back, sorry, how many pilots that were actually involved in 9/11 said the word hijack over the radio or said anything about being attacked to air traffic control that day? None did. No pilots said anything over the radio about being attacked, nor did they follow protocol, which was to squawk a code which I believe was 7500. So out of 4 planes, which would be 8 pilots, a pilot and a co-pilot, not one followed procedure. Question 25. What did Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld do after Flight 77 hit the Pentagon? Well, there's a picture of it. Well, at that moment, he was the most important person on Earth. Of course, with other planes still in the air, he got right to work protecting us. Or 2, he went outside and ran around the Pentagon lawn helping out with stretchers. See, the other 21,000 Pentagon employees who report to him refused his order to go out and help. So he had to do it for a photo op. Question 26. Of the 3 planes that hit buildings on 9/11, how many exceeded their operational design limitations put forward by Boeing for low altitude flight? None of them. Guys who can't land tiny Cessnas in Hollywood or Venice, Florida certainly can't push jumbo jets past Boeing's own design limitations. Duh. All 3 did, with each impact at 500 miles per hour or faster, which many of the pilots for 9/11 Truth have said is impossible for the 757 and 767 at low altitude. See, planes go fast in the thin air of 30,000 feet. They can't do that low to the ground, yet miraculously, they all did. Quote, asking people to believe what the terrorist pilot Henny Hanger did in hitting the Pentagon after a 270-degree blind loop is akin to convincing someone that a 16-year-old who yesterday passed his driver's exam finished in the top 10 at Daytona. Question 27. By incredible coincidence, where was Larry Silverstein, the WTC complex owner, on 9/11? His office, as a reminder, were at Silverstein Properties, high up on Tower 1. Where was he? Well, he was in his office, and he actually helped 50 others survive that day as he escaped the flames like Batman. 2. He was at the dermatologist. No symptoms of illness are required to visit the dermatologist. Carefully consider your answer. Question 27, Part A. Where was Silverstein's son, who also worked in the WTC building? Oh, he was running late for work. Of course. Question 27B. Where was Larry Silverstein's daughter, who also worked high up in Building 1? Oh, she was also running late for work. Of course. Question 28. Why didn't the Pentagon itself shoot down the big fat whale of a jumbo jet heading directly toward it for 30 minutes? 1. After 40 years of Cold War with Russia, supposedly the most secure building in the world has no defenses. That makes sense. 2. The terrorist pilot was flying just 12 feet off the back tail of another plane to avoid any detection, kind of like what Jamie Foxx did in the new remake of Miami Vice. 3. I didn't even know what to put here. It's so ridiculous to believe the Pentagon does not have even one missile battery to protect itself. The most important military building in the world, I can't even think of what to put here. Quote, for sophisticated military, shooting down a commercial jet is like asking Annie Oakley to hit the side of a barn from 10 feet away. Just one soldier in a hot tub on the Pentagon roof with a shoulder-fired missile next to him could have single-handedly protected the building just by standing up in the water and putting on his missile to fire it. $600 billion in defense spending, and we are to believe that even after the country was already on high alert of what happened in New York, the Pentagon could not be protected from a trainee flying a jumbo jet. Are you freaking kidding me? Question 29 is a pictorial question. One of these buildings collapsed from fire. Guess which one? Hint, the bottom right is WTC 7. Question 30. How many of the hundreds or likely thousands of Pentagon security cameras recorded a video or even a still image of American Airlines Flight 77? 45 cameras did? One camera did? None. Something the size of 10 Greyhound buses is actually too big to be captured. Choose your answer wisely. And don't say one camera. That parking camera captured nothing. Give me a break. Question 31. How many robbers avoided 7-Eleven security cameras since 1990? That's 7-Eleven, not 9/11. The answer is none. Now this is all I could do. I could go on and on and on and on with one impossible coincidence after another. But remember, what Scott Pelley and Anderson Cooper tells you should never be questioned. Texas, Shrugged.